Tony Barnhart is in his 48th season of covering college football for radio, television, and the internet.
Started with.
Young at heart, yeah. He was a college football analyst for 8 years with the SEC Network. Previously, he was a college football analyst for CBS Sports and a reporter for ESPN's College Game Day. He spent 25 years at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as a college football writer. Tony is a 1976 graduate of Grady College, the School of Journalism at the University of Georgia. He has been inducted into the school's Grady Fellowship, signifying career achievement and contributions in journalism. In 2016, Tony received the Contribution to Amateur Football Award from the National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame. And in 1999, Tony was named the Georgia Sports Writer of the Year. And on May 22nd, 2021, he was inducted into the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. He has authored 5 books on college football. Two of those are autobiographies on Vince Dooley and Larry Munson. And his 6th book, The 19 of Green, was released on October 15th, 2023. Everyone, please help me in welcoming Tony Barnhart to the Georgia Archives.
Thank you.
All right, now understand when you do this, the most important thing is, does the clicker work? Okay, because if the clicker doesn't work, I get lost. All right, Robin, we go down to click. It's all ready to go. Wow. How is that volume?
That's better.
That volume good? Good, good, very good. Well, first of all, thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. First trip from me to the Georgia Archives, and saw some very interesting stuff. Robin gave me a little tour before we got started here. I'll tell you a little historical note outside on the wall. When we get done, by the way, we're going to be signing books and selling them just around the corner here. But I saw a picture on the wall out there, and it's a picture of John Heisman, for whom the Heisman Trophy is named, but he was dressed up in a baseball uniform, because in addition to being the head football coach at Georgia Tech, he was also the head baseball coach at Georgia Tech. The significance of that baseball picture is this. Back earlier in the year, before football season, Heisman was coaching his baseball team against Cumberland College. He got beat really, really badly. Well, later in the year, Georgia Tech played Cumberland in football, which Georgia Tech felt a lot better about. The final score of that game, Georgia Tech 222, Cumberland 0. So he got his revenge. So that picture is around out there. Folks, it is a joy to be here. I am here today to tell you a story. Oh. All right, Robin is on. Is there an on-off button?
Yeah. There. Let's try one more time.
Okay, down.
Mm-hmm.
Bingo. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for the technology. Folks, I'm here today to tell you a story, the story of the 19 of Green. And and it's really not a story about football. It's a story about how after 50 years, this book you see right there, after 50 years, a bunch of 15 of the guys on this team are still alive, and we remain very, very close. It was the first integrated football team in the history of Greene County. If you haven't been to Greene County, get on I-20 going east. When you get halfway towards Augusta, you are in Greene County. We had a successful season. Relationships, as I mentioned to you, remain. And it's about how football became a positive role model in the integration of Greene County. But it's quite a journey. So this journey began in 2019. My wife will tell you I have several really bad habits, And one of those bad habits is I clean up and I start throwing stuff away because well, there was an envelope in my desk and I pulled it out. It said, "Photos do not throw away." Big lines underneath. So I opened it up and there was an old 1970 photo of our team at Greene County High School, 19 players, 7 white, 7 black, 12 white, and 3 coaches. And I pulled it up and it said, I wonder what these guys are doing now. How many of them are still alive and all that. So what I decided to do is check out and see if there was a story here. Is there a book here? I thought there might be. So how do we get there? So I picked up the phone and I called our quarterback, Charles Turner. Of all this book cover you see right here, of all the guys you see there, Charles Turner was the most decorated player on our football team in the fall of 1970. He's in 4 different halls of fame. So I called him and said, "Charles, you and I need to have lunch. We need to talk about this." And he became my first African-American friend. And so we started talking about it. I said, "Charles, here's what I'm thinking." We met in Athens. I pitched the idea to him and I just said, "I think there's a book here. If we can track all these guys down and talk to them, see what they've been doing for the last 40, 50 years, I think there's a book there." And so the more and more we started talking about it, the more and more excited he got and I got. And we got to the point we started calling our teammates right there in the old Red Lobster. We're calling them up, and Charles would answer. He said, "Hey, Barnhart's got an idea," which in itself was a shock to begin with. Barnhart's got an idea. So we said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." There were 16 of us at that time, and there were 16 of us still alive. There were 4 coaches that were alive, and the plan was to interview all of the players and the coaches and see what we could come of. Would it be a book? And what's interesting is we were wrapping up lunch, we were getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden one of our assistant coaches walks into the restaurant with his wife, and we said, this was meant to be. So we were off and running. Little background here on how we got to this point. Like I mentioned to you, the 1970 team was the first integrated football team in the history of Greene County High School. We'd had the Brown versus Board of Education, separate but equal is inherently equal. That was part of the history that went into the decision in 1970. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was part of that. And finally, the fall of 70 would mark the absolute deadline for full integration. One thing my high school did was very interesting. A lot of schools were experimenting, saying, when we go to full integration, can we sort of ease into it? Don't make it sudden all at once. But so in 1969, when we were juniors, these guys were juniors, full integration was coming the following year. And they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to bus white students from Greene County High School to the black school, Floyd Corry High School, and they will take their English classes over there. It turned out to be a great success, and it worked really, really well. Our team, 1970, we had spring practice in the spring of 1970 to get ready for this. There was a story in the newspaper. It opened up for all students of both schools, and we said, this is going to be great. We're going to merge this school, and we're going to merge both schools together. We're going to have 50 or 60 guys, and we're going to be great. Spring practice is over, and there's the team right there. 19 guys. 19 guys. And so this is what we're going to go with. And our coach said, we're going to be the best conditioned team in all the state of Georgia. And that's where we were. We had great coaches. I just give a shout out to them, Coach C.S. Veazey. They were awesome, and they made up their mind that we were going to make this work. As far as our season goes, we started, because we merged the schools, we used to be Putnam County and Warren County were schools that we played every year, but because our schools merged and got bigger, we were no longer in the same conference, and we don't get to play them anymore, and we found out why. We started 0-2 against Putnam County and Warren County. Then we won 7 of our next 8. The only game we lost to Monroe is when we got all cramped up. We took the wrong Powerade drink, and we cramped up and lost it. We never got over that. That was just terrible. But we won our division, and we played Gainesville High School, mighty Gainesville Red Elephants, for the region championship. And there's every guy that I interviewed for the book will never forget that game with Gainesville. That night, we had only 18 guys. One got sick and had to stay home. We had 18 guys. They had 65 guys ready to go. And we're out there, we're warming up. We sort of, it takes us about 5 minutes to run onto the field. We run on the field, we're sitting there, it's cold, it's rainy, it's miserable. Then all of a sudden, the locker for Gainesville High School locker room opened up, and here they come. And they kept coming, and they kept coming, and they kept coming. Talked to one of my teammates on the field. He saw these guys coming in, and I said, you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to intimidate us. And my teammate said, yeah, it's working. It's working. But that was a game that ended our season. It was 6-0 the whole game. We thought if we could get a break, we could come back and pull the upset, but they got a long punt return for a touchdown later in the game and ended 13-0. But it was an incredible, incredible night. I put this in here, lessons that we learned from this whole experience. We learned a lot of lessons because I've talked, and all the guys I interviewed, I talked to them, said, what did you learn? And one of the things we as white students learned, we did not fully appreciate what the black students had to go through. They had, think about this, our black schoolmates, they had to give up their senior year of high school to go to another school. They had been thinking about graduating from Floyd T. Corry the whole time they were in school. I thought that was a tremendous, tremendous sacrifice. One other thing our black classmates had to go through, they finally got a gym the year before the merger took place. But there were 3 different bond referendums to build a gym in Greene County. All 3 got shot down. So Charles Turner told me about him having to talk with his father and about how it is dangerous for a young black man on the roads when the police stop. There's a certain way you have to behave. And my father didn't have that conversation with me because he didn't need to. Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, what I learned from researching this book is race relations have come a long way, but we still got a long way to go. I was pointing out to a couple of people, this list of players right here, there's 19 in there. And for 19 guys, we had a lot of guys who have accomplished a great deal in their lives. I mentioned to you about Charles Turner. Charles Turner went on to play for Clark Atlanta University. He was the only player on this team that played college football. Very, very talented. I mentioned to you, he's in 4 different halls of fame. He was an educator, an administrator. He coached Cedar Shoals High in Athens to a women's state basketball championship. And again, today, he remains one of my closest friends. I've been very fortunate in my career. Robin was nice enough to list those out there. And so that it's been an honor to be a part of this class. Colonel Tom Faust. Colonel Faust is on the front row sitting down, number 81. He came from a military family. He always knew he was going to be in the military. And so he went into ROTC at the University of Georgia. And on September 11th, 2001, Colonel Tom Faust was assigned to the Pentagon. He ran a G2 section, had over 200 people under his command. He was on his way to the Pentagon for work when the plane hit. He spent that day with his staff tracking down all 200 plus people under his command. He found them all. None were hurt. He had an incredible career, lives out in Texas now. Al Kaysen, 34 years as a pharmacist at Central State Hospital. Brilliant guy. And next to Charles Turner was the second best athlete on that team. He had a tremendous career. Tommy Moon didn't know what he was going to do. He was our backup quarterback. But he decided he was going to try to make a living playing golf. 38 years as a club professional, as a teaching pro. Tremendous career. Arthur Jackson, 29 years with the Georgia State Patrol. When he retired, he was assigned to the governor's mansion, and our other teammates were very, very successful. But for a small group, they absolutely did a great job. Now, this is my 6th book, and I've never had this problem before, but when you do a book like this, the question is, how do you end it? You've told this wonderful story, but how do you get out? And we went through several phases of the book before we finally figured out a way we were going to end the book. In 2019, we all decided, okay, we're going to get together for homecoming. That'll be our 49th anniversary as a team together. And so that we did that. It was great. It was fun. And so 2019, that's good. Next year, 2020, we'll have our 50th reunion together. Well, as you know, we didn't have our 50th reunion. Thank you, Mr. COVID. He had other ideas. So we did have our 50th reunion by Zoom, but that didn't cut it. We decided we were going to find another way to do it. So one thing Charles and I decided to do, we decided to go back to Greene County and visit, and we figured, we just asked the principal, could we walk onto the field? When we got there, the gate was open, and there were 10 or 15 people there to greet us. It was tremendous. So Charles and I just took a tour, as you can see right here. We took a tour around the stadium and just spent some time sitting in the stands together, and that was a great moment. That turned out to be, we were going to use it as the last chapter of the book, but it turned out too good. So we ended up making it the first chapter of the book. So now we're happy now, but how are we going to end the story? Well, one more twist. In 2022, Greene County High School created its Greene County Tigers Circle of Honor. And what they did was they honored people who had made contributions to Greene County High School, athletics, academics, as an educator. And so I get a phone call from Charles Turner. He says, Barnhart, you're not going to believe this. They've created a Circle of Honor, and I'm in it. I said, that's great, Charles. We'll be there. And they honored him before the homecoming game. I said, we'll be there. Now we've got our perfect ending to the book. It's all great. 6 of our teammates showed up to honor Charles. And when they honored Charles for his 3 children and his 6 grandchildren, and they were all there. And I said, man, this is perfect. This is Charles with his whole family and the principal and the athletic director. And I just thought that was a tremendous photo. These were the teammates that turned out to support him. So that was great. So right now I'm really happy because we have got the perfect ending to the book. Well, there was one more twist. And the twist was in July of 2023, this book is they're going to start the presses in 2 weeks to do it for my book. I got a letter from the principal saying, congratulations, Mr. Barnhart. You've been named to the Greene County Circle of Honor. So I'm on the phone crazy, and I'm calling the publisher. I said, is there anything we can do to get this in the book? Because it's sort of kind of be there. And so they halted the printing of the book in order to get something in there at the very end. So this is the editor's note at the end. We added to the book, got it in there. And they inducted us during the ceremonies before the homecoming game. I was there with my wife, my daughter, my son-in-law, my 2 grandchildren, and a bunch of teammates turned out. And now we've got the perfect ending to the book. So I'm happy on that. This is really, really neat. On December 9th, we said, everybody kept saying, you got to have a book signing at home. You got to have a book signing at home. So Maria and I, my wife, who's great at putting events together, she put together an event at the gymnasium at Greene County High School. And we said, what if nobody shows up for this? What? Maria said, don't worry, it'll be great. Well, we had the gymnasium, 9 players of the 15 living players who were scattered out, 9 were able to come back. We had over 75 guests that turned out. And put it this way, UGA Press ran out of books, which is what's something you always like to hear. We're not going to run out of books here today. So, but UGA, so they've been very, very suppressed. This is the game. This is the program for the celebration, 19 of Greene. That was really, really, really neat. It was a special day. A couple others I want to show you. This was the crowd at the gymnasium. Tremendous turnout. We put out 75 chairs and had about 70 people. And it was absolutely wonderful to have 9 players. But this is the everlasting image I'm going to have of that day, folks. And it's this. Every player who's on that cover right there has his own chapter in the book. And what we did was we put out a table with their own name tags, and every player got to sign their chapter. And they were just absolutely tickled to death, and so was I. And we had a chance to visit with all the folks in Greene County. They were literally people there that we had not seen, that I had not seen in 50 years. It was a wonderful, wonderful day. So, all right, I appreciate you having me in today. Like I said, I'm going to take some time now for some questions. When we're done, again, there are books for sales. Certainly be happy to sign those books if you'll do it. But if you've got any questions, please, I'm gonna stand around from the podium there. Any questions? Any questions about the book? Way in the back there. Yes.
Think they'll make a movie out of it?
Oh, the question is, will they make a movie out of it? There's a great story that goes with that question. One of the central characters in the book, aside from the players, is my English teacher, Tommy, T-O-M-M-I, Ward, my female English teacher. Tommy, when I was a sophomore, she came up and I'd started writing a little bit at that age. And she said, Tony, you know, if you work at it, you could be a writer for a living. I said, yeah, Tommy, but the operative word in that sentence is work. Okay? But she has been very close to me over the years. Matter of fact, when I did the first draft of the manuscript, I sent it to her. I said, you get to read this first. You've been editing me since I was 14 years old. You get to read it first. So she read it. It was read everywhere. She came back and she did all these editing changes. But we get to the end, the book's done, and Tommy comes up to me and says, look, I only want one favor. If you do a movie, I want Sandra Bullock to play me. Tommy, you were 21 years old when you took the job at Greene County High School. So Tommy said, yeah. So I said, yeah, sure. I said, sure, Tommy. Sandra Bullock will play you when we do the movie. So, but yeah, I would love to do a movie on this. It is a theme, like Remember the Titans. Everybody remembers that. I tell people, Remember the Titans was, said my coach did not look anything like Denzel Washington. I'm just telling you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How's the high school doing now?
Questions, how's the high school doing now? It's doing really well. I went back because I was going into the Ring of Honor. I went back to the most recent homecoming and had a chance to visit with the principal while I was there. The graduation rate for Greene County High School is now 97%. And I was thrilled. They've got some academic programs. They've done very, very well. Very proud of what they've done academically. Incredible.
If you did pursue having a movie about it, do you think that you would be able to have sponsors for funding the movie?
Yeah, you got in the movie business, you got to go out and find yourself a good producer. Yeah, you would hope to have sponsors to help you do it. So It's something I would love to see done. You know, what's interesting about this whole experience and what I got out of it is that not many of us get a chance to sort of relive a big chunk of their lives. And this was a big chunk of my life when it happened in the fall of 1970. But these guys have remained friends. We've all remained friends. And matter of fact, we're playing in a golf tournament in a couple of weeks. Charles Turner has his own golf tournament, and 3 of us are going to play with him in this tournament. And so, but it's just it's really, people talk about something being a labor of love, and it really was, because these were guys I thought I would never see again. There were guys that we needed help, but we tracked down every living player, and I was able to interview every living player. True story here. One of our coaches lived in Augusta, Georgia, and we found out that he had been seriously injured in a lawnmower accident and was paralyzed from the chest. And so one afternoon, Charles came by and he says, his name's going to go see Coach. And so he picked me up. He picked Ben Allen Gresham, smallest guy on the team, number 41, right there. We got in Charles' truck and we went to see Coach Larry Callair, Callair. And he was, imagine how he felt. He had been confined to his house for a long time. And all of a sudden, 3 of his players show up and spent the day with him. And there's a picture in the book of all of us together in that story. And we lost Coach Callair about 14 months ago. But that was, I will never forget that day. And the look on his face when we walked in, you can't describe it. And there were a lot of moments like that. One of my other coaches, Dennis Fordham, when our head coach, the head coach that I played for was C.S. Veazey, and one of our assistant coaches, Dennis Fordham, also played for Coach Veazey. Dennis Fordham was the first all-state player that Coach Veazey ever had. So as a result, Coach Veazey, he kept Dennis Fordham's picture in his office. When Coach Veazey passed away about 10 years ago, his wife gave that picture to Coach Fordham. And now that picture is in Coach Fordham's desk in Covington, Georgia. But those are the kind of stories that go through throughout this book. And it's to get a chance to relive that like I did, it was very, very special. Yes, sir.
This is the football nerd in me coming out. What type of offense did y'all run?
Question was, what kind of offense did we run? Now, with Charles Turner at quarterback, we put quarterback run playing a lot. But Al Kaysen, right here, number 22. We had 4 really good running backs. Al Kaysen ended up being, as the season went on, we found out that our offensive line and our running backs were really good. So when it came crunch time in the second half of the season, we were running that Green Bay Packers sweep. And Al Kaysen, absolutely, he did it, and he got beat up. But it was a power formation. But what we did a lot of. I'm getting geeky here myself. We did a lot of play action passes where we would fake it to Al and then send the guys. Freddie Walker, number 20, right here. As one of our assistant coaches said, Coach Callair. Coach Callair said that Freddie Walker was the fastest white boy he'd ever seen. And he was the fastest player on our team, but we would run play action pass with Al Kaysen, fake it to him, throw over the top and do that. But it was a power game. And that's what everybody ran back then. So
Pretty much everybody have to do offense and defense.
oh yeah. The question was, did you have to play offense and defense? Here's the reality, and don't tell them I said this. We had 19 players on the team. We only played 16 of them because those other 3 guys, we could not put them on the team. We just couldn't do it. Okay? Wasn't fair to them, and it sure wasn't fair to the rest of us. And so yeah, everybody had to play both ways. I played offensive guard, offensive tackle, center, and defensive end. It was something. It was something. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Are there other books about football?
The question is about other books about football. Yes, the first book I did in 1999 was a book called Southern Fried Football, the history, passion, and glory of a great Southern game. And it's just a history book about why we in the South are so gaga about college football. And it's great teams, great coaches, great traditions, and all that. And I really, really enjoyed doing that book, and that's why I wanted to be my first. The other books, I did Vince Dooley's autobiography. I was very honored to do it. He wanted to do it and told the publisher that he would like for me to do it. Coach Dooley and I were very, very close. And you can imagine that growing up watching Georgia football, to have to spend 2 to 3 days a week with Vince Dooley, putting that book together was really special. One of the other books was the autobiography of Larry Munson, longtime radio voice of the Georgia Bulldogs. Just incredible.
What was the name of those 2 books?
All right, the Dooley book, the Vince Dooley book was Dooley, My 41 Years at Georgia, my 40 years at Georgia. He was head coach for 25 years and then was athletic director for the rest of that time. The Larry Munson book is called From Herschel to a Hobnail Boot, The Life and Times of Larry Munson. It was by far the most interesting project I've ever worked on. Because Larry, I try to be organized, particularly when I'm doing the book with somebody else. And so I would be all this organization. I'd have it down. I said, okay, Larry, we're going to talk about this and this and this and this. And when we got to the second topic, Larry just went off into his own world, and we didn't talk about anything that I wanted to talk about. We talked about what he wanted to talk about, he said. And he was just incredibly, incredibly funny. And when we got to the end of the book together, we had gotten to the point where I didn't even knock on his door anymore. I just walked in, and he would see me and says, it was the year that Georgia was going to open at Oklahoma State. And Larry didn't understand why Georgia was playing at Oklahoma State. So I walked in, and he just looked up at me and went, who the hell is Oklahoma State? And why the hell are we going there? And how do you get there? And if you get there, how do you get back? That was Larry. Did another book called What It Means to Be a Bulldog. And this was a book for Triumph Books in Chicago. And literally, it's an oral history of Georgia football as told in the voices. I started interviewing players in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And that's just these guys talking about what it was like being at Georgia. And that was a great book. And I've got a couple other books, and of course the 19. This is the one I'm most proud of, because this touches home. And I'm very, very pleased. And I was very pleased with the way it turned out. We had big arguments back and forth with the publisher and the editor about sort of how the tone of the book would go. I said, I said, race is a part of this book. You can't write a book about academics and football and all that in 1970 and race not be a important part of it. And so that's the way it's turned out. But I enjoy doing all the books that I've done, but this will always be my favorite. Anybody else? Yes, sir. In the back.
At the time that you were on the team and in school, kind of a two-part. Did you understand the impact of being that first integrated team? And what kind of effect did not just being that first integrated team have on the community, but the success of that team have?
Right. The question is, and it's a very good one, because we talked about this. When we were going through it, schools were integrating. We were the first integrated football team. We were playing together, and it really brought the community together. One thing that's in this book, Greene County did fairly well. We had a few episodes at school. We had a stabbing. We had a couple other things, but on balance, team really put the county together. But did we know we were doing it when we were going through it? And the answer is no. Because I asked every player, did you realize what we were doing? I said, never thought about it. Never thought, because and that was the thing about that team. These guys wanted to play football, and we wanted to win. That's what it was all about. Now, as like in most things in life, when you get older, you start thinking about these things. That's why doing this book was such a great opportunity, because we could talk. Now we can talk about this. This is in the introduction. It says we didn't talk about it then. It said that conversation will have to wait for another day, and that another day is now, and that is part of it. And you ask about how the impact on the county itself and impact on us. I think just from talking to the guys, playing on this team did us all a lot of good, and we were exposed to the other cultures, the other ways of doing things, and it just, everybody I talked to, particularly when we had the reunion, people said this was a very important time in our lives, and it was. That's why I always tell people, this book is not about football. Okay, it's not. Football is a very important part of this book, because football is the thing that brought us together. What the book's about is the fact that 50 years after we played our last game together, a lot of these guys are still in touch. A lot of these guys, like I said, I'll see Charles Turner in a couple of weeks. And Charles has done some signings with me, and that's just been just a great joy. So, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Tell about your writing experiences in North Carolina and Atlanta.
Well, thank you. I graduated from Georgia's journalism school in 1976. Spent 9 months at a small newspaper in South Carolina, and then had the opportunity to go to Greensboro, North Carolina. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point. And we loved North Carolina. We absolutely loved it. And I covered ACC football and basketball for the newspaper up there, Greensboro News and Record. And my wife and I, we got married in North Carolina. Our only child was born in North Carolina. And we said, we love it here. We're going to stay here unless the Atlanta Journal-Constitution calls. Because when you grow up where I grew up, if you're in the newspaper business, that's your goal. If you want to work, if you cover college football, you want to work for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Nobody did it better. And so that was my goal. And so I couldn't see going to another newspaper without giving that a shot. 1984, they called. And I signed on. I was a Georgia beat guy, stayed at the newspaper for 25 years, and then got into radio and television. But it's been right. I will always be an old newspaper guy. I mean, I've done a lot of radio and television and books and speeches, but I will always be an old newspaper guy, and I'm very happy about that. So, yes, sir.
Tony, I'm a Jacksonville boy and a Florida grad, but both of my parents are Georgian. My father's side is from Crawford County, Roberta, and my mother's side is Andersonville. And our extended family has almost all of the acres immediately adjacent to the Andersonville National Cemetery. I've ever been down there. Wow. Beautiful stretch of land. But I got a million questions, but I'm wondering about Corry High School and you going over there as a junior for your English classes. Right. And I'm just so fascinated about if you can go back to that time. Sure. As a high school student. And, the mythologies and all. I graduated from high school in 1977 as senior class president at Orange Park High. That's a Jacksonville suburb. but a lot of people were fleeing Duval County
Oh, yeah.
and Coffee, where we lived. And so it's a Navy community. We mixed and mingled, but there were a lot of fears. A lot of fears. And I'm just wondering, did y'all have some of that to go from a white school to a black school? And how did that play out? And what was the reality?
Well, I will, first of all, let me tell you the story of that experiment as when we were juniors of taking, imagine this now, you take the white kids from Greene County High School and said, okay, we're gonna bus you to Floyd T. Corry High School, and you're gonna take English here, and then you're gonna come back. Nobody knew what to expect. Nicholas Antone, one of our coaches, and a great English teacher, he was doing it, and Tommy Ward, who we just talked about, she was the white English teacher that went. They became, first of all, they became best buddies. And that happened. When they bust the white students over, and Mr. Antone tells the story in this book. The black students got there first, and so they were sitting on this side of the wall. The white students come in and they just take the seats that are there. So now imagine, if you will, black students on this side of the room, white students on this side of the room. Mr. Antone says, no, we're not doing this. He said, we're not doing this. And so the next day when the students came in, seats were assigned alphabetically. And he said it was an amazing thing to watch. Were the students nervous? Sure. Both sets of students were nervous, black and white, because they didn't know what to expect. He said after 2 days, it all went away. They were teenagers talking about stuff that teenagers talk about. He said it was the smartest thing we ever did, but there was no way that Mr. Antone was going to have black students on one side and white on the other. So and because it happened to all of us as juniors, when full integration came in the fall of 1970, it was no big deal.
Yeah.
It was no big deal. We'd already been exposed. And besides those of us who played football, it was never a big deal, because talk to you about Charles Turner, great story. Charles Turner, everybody knew how good Charles Turner was. But I asked one of my white teammates, I said, and Tommy Moon, the guy who ended up being a pro, golf pro, I said, Tommy, when did you know that Charles Turner was going to be our quarterback? He said, the minute he walked off the bus. That's how good. Because so those of us who were playing football, it was not. Coach Veazey, our head coach, Coach Charlton Veazey, met with all of the white players before the black players came over for the very first time. And he said, man, I'm telling you one thing right now. He said, these young men who are coming over from Corry, they are just like you. They have families who care about them, and they want to play football, and they want to win, and that's what we're going to do. There will be no conflict. None. It won't happen. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Okay. We had one 30-second fight an entire year. That was George Stapleton and James Kimbrough. It lasted 30 seconds, and after practice was over, they were hugging and laughing about it.
Why didn't 50 or 60 show up? Parental pressure?
It's a great question. The question is, why do we only have 19? And I talked to everybody about it, and I've got everything from guys just didn't want to play, guys didn't have transportation, which was a real issue, by the way. That was a real issue. Transportation to and from practice, and I think they tried to help there. But I asked every single player and all the coaches, and really never got a satisfactory answer. So, but you play with the players you have. Yes, ma'am.
I think the ones who would give an honest, well, they might not give an honest answer, but I think the ones who would address that are the people other than the 19.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the 19 are going to be able to answer that question. It's the whatever the math is to run out of that 60 that you expected. That's where the answer to that is.
I mean, we basically doubled the size of the school. And so I think you make a very good point. It's one of those things. I don't think I left a lot unresolved in this book, but that's one I wish I'd have gotten better handle on. Yes, sir.
So how many players did you have as the white school?
Oh, you mean
The prior year.
the prior year? We had about 40. We had about 40. We were a pretty good team my junior. But we had about 40. Okay. Yes.
This may be a little bit about asking a parent what their favorite child is, but you've had such an amazing career. Is there a game or a moment that stands out that you still think about?
Well, the one was an emotional moment. One was just an incredibly competitive game. But the best football game I ever saw was the Rose Bowl between Texas and USC for the night when Vince Young scored the national for the game for the national championship. It was just a tremendous game, and I was for the national. He scored and won the national championship at the Rose Bowl. I mean, come on, you kidding me? For a kid who grew up in Union Point, Georgia, I'm really sitting here watching this, and I'm getting paid to do it. Really? So, but the other moment is, I tell people this all, the most emotional, those of you who follow college football history a little bit, on December 2nd, 1989, Alabama played at Auburn for the very first time, at Auburn. The game was always in Legion Field, okay, in Birmingham. And Bear Bryant said that as long as he was alive, Alabama would never play at Auburn. Well, guess what? We lost Coach Bryant in 1983, and about 3 or 4 years later, 1989, they played there. And they have at Auburn what's called the Tiger Walk. Sewell Hall is the road that goes up to the athletic dorm and dining hall and all that. And before the game, the players walk. There's a human corridor, and the players walk down Sewell Hall to the stadium. And that's why they call it the Tiger Walk. I'm down there with an Alabama State trooper. I said, "How many people are out here?" He said, "At least 40,000 outside the stadium." And so the players come walking, and I'm watching grown men stand in that Tiger Walk crying because they were told Alabama will never come to play it. They're not going to do it. And the day that it finally happened, and it was the most emotional day I've ever seen in a football field. So I will never forget that. And here's what happened. Alabama was undefeated. If they beat Auburn, then they get a chance to go play in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship. Auburn won the game, and it was incredible. But those are two moments I will never forget. And just being there for Vince Dooley's last game was in the Gator Bowl was a special moment as well. Yes.
You talked about your book about how football is, and what we say in our family is a religion in Alabama. What is it about football that makes it so big in the South? College football.
You can dig really deep on this subject, but I think it comes down to the fact that for the longest time, they didn't have pro sports in the South. But it goes back to the Civil War and fighting and on and on. Again, you can dig really, really deep. But the thing about college football in the South, it binds the generations. You go to games, and there are 4 generations of family sitting there doing it. And it's just there's a passion about it that you don't get in professional football. And it's just it's funny. We're sitting here May 10th today. I promise you in about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, when we get to June, people start coming up to me in the grocery store saying, "Man, when is it going to get here?" I can't believe it. I said, "Practice starts in August." Oh man, when is it going to get? People build their lives around college football. Okay, just true story. A friend of mine by the name of Michael Resco was a VP for programming at CBS. one of the things he would do at CBS is he would pick which games CBS was going to show, which SEC game of the week CBS was going to show coming up at the 3:30 game. One day, Mike's at work, he gets a call from a lady, says, can you tell me what game is going to be on November 11th? This is August. Can you tell me what game is going to be on November? I said, well, no, ma'am, I can't do that. We have to wait till we get closer to the game. I said, well, I'm supposed to get married on November 11th. And my priest told me he will not marry me if LSU is playing on that day. Can you help me? I said, no, ma'am, we're going to have to get a little closer to the day. So they build Southern Fried Football story. Danny Ford, the head coach at Clemson, his wife Deborah is getting ready to have their third child. She goes to the doctor, goes to her and checking out, says, okay, everything's looking good. That baby's coming on Saturday. Coach Ford just happened to be in the room. No, doctor, that baby is not coming Saturday because we're playing Wake Forest. No, Coach Ford, you don't understand. The baby's, no. But they induced labor, the baby came on Friday. And I talked to Deborah Ford about it. I said, that's asking a lot, isn't it, Deborah? Says, well, I just figured it's part of being a coach's wife. You know? Yes, sir.
I got a Florida Georgia question, of course.
Sure.
How
How many Gators you got in the family?
We got a bunch.
How's that working out?
Look, it's the Georgia people, you know.
Of course it is.
Florida. We didn't become anybody but Florida, people, you know. So it's a great rivalry. But my first 2 years at UF were 80 and 81,
Mhm.
and that damn Herschel Walker broke my heart.
It was pretty good.
Both years. And I'm just wondering, what is a premier Florida Georgia memory for you?
My premier Georgia Florida memory is one where I was not at the game.
Mm.
And you'll appreciate this. I worked in North Carolina on that year, and I was covering North Carolina A&T, HBCU school in Greensboro, North Carolina. So I was in Tallahassee for the game between North Carolina A&T and FAMU, okay? And the Georgia-Florida game was on, and I'm watching it, and because I wasn't covering Georgia, I felt free to pull for Georgia. I'm a Georgia grad. So you have the famous play, Buck Bellew to Lindsey Scott,
Oh my God.
touchdown, which you will remember well.
Oh yeah.
And when that happened, that won the game. It was a miracle play at the end. I was in my hotel room. I jumped in the air, and one of these hanging lamps was over right here. And I jumped in the air, and my fist went right through the lamp, absolutely destroyed it. And fortunately, I wasn't hurt or anything, but the next morning I check out, I said, could I see the manager? I'm the manager. Well, I'm very sorry. I'm in room this is, and I was watching the game and I got excited when Georgia won and destroyed the lamp. He said, well, wait a minute. Are you telling me that you destroyed a lamp pulling against Florida?
Mm.
He said, yes. Well, I'm a Florida State guy. You don't know me a thing. True story. The Georgia-Florida game is very special to me for this reason. I have a group of my fraternity brothers, and for about 40 years, we've gone to the Georgia-Florida game together. It's the one time a year. We got one guy in Albany, one guy in Colorado Springs, one guy in the Chattanooga area, and me. And the four of us it's the one time a year we all get to see each other. And we know we'll see each other because we'll all be in Jacksonville. And so that game means, aside from the game, I mean, last year we all got together. We didn't even go to the game.
Mm.
We had the best tailgate you're ever going to see. And we said, we're not leaving this to go in there with crazy people. We're going to stay here.
Yeah.
And we had a blast. But it's a tremendous tradition. Unfortunately, we lost one of our boys about a year ago. And so, well, even then, We were there, the rest of us were there for the Georgia-Florida game. He wasn't there, but we got a picture, a lifelike cutout picture of him. And every place we would go to dinner, we put him in the chair and give him Miller Lite, which is his favorite beverage, and we put it in front of him. And he was there with us. But that's what Georgia-Florida means to us. It has kept us together. It's a great, great tradition. It really is. Oh, I do have one other Gator story for you. My wife and I moved into our home in Dunwoody, just outside of Atlanta. We had been there 15 minutes. Here comes a guy in a red sports car with a Florida Gator tag right in the front. Pulled in the driveway, says, "Hi, neighbor. You guys are everywhere. You're everywhere." So.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
What are you looking forward to this year? It's always something new in football, especially in college football.
This is going to be, the question was, what about this season? And this is going to be one of the most interesting seasons we've ever had. Because now we have not a 14 playoff, we have a 12-team playoff. And how do the dynamics change with a 12-team playoff? See, I contend, somebody said, well, it's going to be easier to make the playoffs. I said, yeah, but think how much pressure is on how many teams to make the playoffs. I mean, if you're Alabama, you got to make the playoffs. With 12 teams, with all the resources we give you, you can't make, Georgia's got to make the playoffs. You've got all the research. So just following that's going to be just because all the, when we get to the end of the season, we're really only talking about, with a 14 playoff, we're only talking about 5, 6, 7 teams that really have a realistic shot to make it. Now, when we get to November and we're having this conversation, there's going to be 30 teams that'll at least be in the discussion. So I think that's going to be special. People ask me about NIL and all that money. Just live with it. Nothing's going to change for this year. If there's change, we'll have some next year. We'll see. Nothing's going to change. And the transfer portal, I talked to somebody about that. Players are going to be able to transfer what they want to. That is not going to change. And the coaches need to quit whining about it because frankly, they get players too. They lose players, but they also get players. So there's no point in whining about that. So not that I would say coaches whine. Well, yeah, I would. They do. They do. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
What kind of things are you doing now? TV, radio, or are you also doing newspaper articles?
My buddies and I own a website. It's under the Athlon umbrella. Once the season starts, right now, I'm doing as little as possible. Okay, I'm doing just enough to stay busy. I enjoy doing visits like this. But I have a radio show that I do on every Saturday for a couple of hours, based out of Nashville. And so it's a combination of that, doing writing, giving talks like this that I really enjoy. But I told people, I said, when I'm not using the R word, but I'm as busy as I want to be. I think and that's at Mrs. Barnhart's request. And when Mrs. Barnhart makes a request, I try to accommodate her as best I can.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I would say that your job with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution aided you a lot with this research. But what was your job with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution?
I began in the fall of 1984. I was the Georgia beat writer, which meant that all I did was cover the University of Georgia football team. That was my only job. I was in Athens just about every single day. And I did that job for a couple of years. And then the sports editor came to me and says, how would you like to be the assistant sports editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution? I was 30 years old. The answer to that question has got to be yes. You don't turn it down. I did that for 2 years. I learned an incredible, just so much about the business, how it works and all that. I was totally miserable.
Because it was limited?
Because I was used to being in the stadium every week. That was part of my identity. who was covering a team and doing all those things. And so what we eventually worked out is I became the assistant sports editor, but in charge of all the people who covered college football. So I was a national writer in these things. So I managed the guys and ladies covering college football for us, but I went and was able to go to the games that I wanted to and do my own thing. It was the perfect job for me. And that's why I stayed for 25 years. And then the buyouts came along and I took that. So, but spent 35 years in the newspaper business. So happy I did. So happy I did.
If somebody wants to listen to you, what's the radio station?
And Nashville, it's go to 104.5. 104.5 in Nashville. That is the home of the Volunteer Network. Every Saturday from 10 until noon. I'm on with a guy named Doug Matthews, who was an assistant for Johnny Majors. Doug Matthews was a defensive coordinator for Johnny Majors at Tennessee. That's fun. Yes, sir.
Tony, I also enjoyed listening. You're talking about your Nashville show. You and West Durham had a great run with radio. I don't guess y'all are going to be able to recreate that, or
we're both so busy. Wes and I we did 4 days a week. In 2009, my schedule was, and I was doing a show for CBS Sports Network. Oddly enough, called the Tony Barnhart Show. I thought that was a creative title for me. But we had that. We were also doing a show called Talking Football on CSS that had a lot of success. So between Wes and I doing 4 radio shows a week and doing Talking Football twice a week and doing CBS, that was the busiest year I ever had. I think that 2009, I went to New York 29 times. Yeah, wow. A lot of time. But Wes and I, thank you for asking about that. Wes and I just absolutely had a blast. He's one of my dearest friends, and we had a lot of fun doing that show. But then he got famous as the voice of the Atlanta Falcons.
Is this radio channel 104.5 AM or FM?
FM 104.5. They call it 104.5 the zone FM.
What are the call letters?
I have no idea. Let's do a Google of 104.5 zone. I have no idea. I was speaking of Google. I told the story the other day when Coach Dooley and I were doing his autobiography. He was trying to figure something out. We had an assistant who was helping us do research and all of that. And he turned and asked a question, and Jennifer said, "Don't worry about it, Coach. I'll Google it." Jennifer, what is this Google thing that you're talking about? Hilarious. All right. We're good. Folks, it's been good. If you'd like a book, we'll be selling them outside. Be happy to autograph it for you. This has been very enjoyable. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a special day. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Tony, for being here today. That was amazing. As he mentioned, so there's a bookstore, independent bookstore from McDonough, Story on the Square. They're here on this table out here, and Mr. Barnhart said he'd be happy to stick around a little bit, sign copies, talk to everybody. So thank you again. Just to let you guys know what's coming up for next Lunch and Learn, we have W. Wright Mitchell from the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. He's going to be talking about the 2024 Places in Peril, and that is June 14th. And then always explore our social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and I'll put Mr. Barnhart's talk today up on our YouTube channel, hopefully next week. And thank you again, everybody. Please feel free to stay and chit chat.